Welcome to Shikama Live Show with your host Shikama. I'm starting a series and I'm turning it into a series so that the video won't be extra long, like 2 hours or 3 hours or something like that. So I'm just going to do a series of videos all instructing and informing you about nullification. A nullification is in the news now, all over the news. The mainstream media is very afraid of the word nullifications. They are calling whole states terrorists, calling whole states anti-American. It's really laughable when you know what nullification is. They're trying to conjure up all of these demons and ghosts and skeletons, talking about we're going to revert back to slavery because of nullification. Well, what is nullification? Nullification is nothing more than individuals or local and state governments nullifying laws that they deem unconstitutional, unjust, and against state law, state or individual law, or that infringes upon the rights of the people in their states. So, a state would nullify a federal law, right? Individuals on, say, a jury would nullify a local law. Ultimately, the individual can nullify all of the laws because the jury has the power to nullify any and every law that comes in front of them. That is the power, and that is something that common law is actually based on. So today, for the introduction, I'm going to talk about jury nullification. Now, jury nullification is not talked about that much these days. They don't make movies about it. It's not the subject in TV shows. In fact, jury nullification is all but hushed up and brushed under the rug. And why is it? Because jury nullification is the most power the individual has. You, as citizens of the United States, can walk into a courtroom and nullify any law that they're trying to prosecute a person with. Be it a federal law or be it a local law, state or local law. You have the ability to say, no, we will not tolerate this law. I don't care what kind of case you have presented against the defendant. This law is unjust and we will not pay attention to it, and it is an unjust law. We find the defendant innocent. Why? Because we find him innocent under this unjust law. This law cannot be applied to this person. It violates his constitution. It violates our sense of justice. You have that power. And this is a power that the left and the right doesn't speak about, doesn't talk about, doesn't even mention. Nullification is the way to get rid of Obamacare. Nullification, if they're going to start prosecuting people, and they have said that they're going to start prosecuting people. People didn't believe me when I said it. They said, oh no, they clearly said that they're not going to prosecute anybody. Oh, well, now it's in the news that the IRS is in fact going to prosecute people and throw them in jail. Based on that, who is it? Wesley Snipes? Had the jury been instructed, you have the ability to let this man go free if you believe that the IRS codes are unconstitutional and unjust and violate this man's constitutional rights, God-given rights. They could have let Wesley Snipes go free with that jury instruction. But do you think they got that jury instruction? No, they did not. When a judge says, go back and make a decision based on the law and your conscience, the point where he says, and your conscience, is supposed to be the instruction that says, if your conscience says that this man is innocent based on your notion of justice, you can nullify this law and let this guy go free and still be innocent. That's what it's supposed to mean, but the population has not been instructed this. What was jury nullification used for before? It was used during the fugitive slave laws in the United States. The fugitive slave laws said that if a person is a slave, bought and sold into slavery, regardless of his position beforehand, they even had black people who were free, had been free, were born free, had shops and businesses and were rich even. And they were kidnapped, captured, and sold into slavery. And then that person then tried to go back to their home in a place where slavery was not legal. The Supreme Court held that they were still a slave, regardless of what the law was of where they stood. It simply meant that they couldn't be sold into slavery in that state. But if they were captured again, they would have to go back to the place where they are slaves. That was the fugitive slave laws. And juries nullified those cases time and time again, because the jurors did not feel that it was just for a person to escape to a free state and still be considered a slave. Because of this, the Underground Railroad was quite prosperous and was very successful in what it was doing at the time. Jury nullification was also used heavily during the Prohibition era, where they were confiscating alcohol. They found the defendants consistently innocent. Jury nullification was used heavily during that time. And it led to, of course, the abolishment of the prohibition against alcohol. You as jurors, when you go to a jury trial, are the judges of not only the facts of the case and how do you feel the defendant is, and is he a spooky guy, is he a scary guy, and did he actually do it, and did the prosecution prove beyond a reasonable doubt that what he was doing actually happened, and how he painted the picture actually occurred, you are also the judges of the law. If a person is found with 20 pounds of marijuana and the defendant says, I smoked this marijuana because I have glaucoma and I'm in pain every day, you as jurors can say, no, I don't care what you say. This person has the just thing to do is to allow this person to smoke his marijuana because of his glaucoma. Your crusade to stop all marijuana and hemp use is null and void because it's unjust. You are persecuting people who don't need to be persecuted. We don't want glaucoma patients, cancer patients, sitting up in court in a bed, a hospital bed, being put on trial because you're on a crusade to stop marijuana use. This is what jurors, the jury, is supposed to do. During the beginning of the country, nullification was looked upon favorably. Why? Because during the beginning of the country, the whole notion that some king was imposing tariffs and taxes and laws that went against the rights of free men was weighed heavily upon the population's mind. So jury nullification was actually applauded during those days. Jury nullification was instructed at every trial. You had a responsibility to make sure that the law was just. Justice, this whole sense of justice, was heavily looked upon favorably during the beginning of the country. It's only till much later that we get lawyers as a sort of like profession, like a job, that we get this whole notion of we need to keep our job going. You can't have jurors doing things like coming back with a verdict of innocent and a jury nullification after you have done all of your research, done all of your homework, put together a case, looked up all of the information, looked up all the evidence, made sure that the evidence was clean, made sure that your experts were coming. After all of that, and all of that money spent, and the jury comes back and says, the law is unjust. This person is innocent. The law itself is unjust. So, in several states, many states, the judges are instructed to not only tell juries to disregard any speech that the defendant gives, the defendant attorney gives on the law being unjust, and that you can nullify it. The jury is instructed to disregard that, but they hold the attorneys in contempt of court. This is what is going on today. The whole point of the common law system and to be judged by members of your peers is that the members of your peers can say, you know what, this is unjust, and we are not going to prosecute people in our society based on this law. The voir dire section of the trial is where the attorneys kick out jurors that they don't feel will be good for the trial. So the voir dire is a rejection of jurors that won't follow the lawyer's instructions, including any sense that they might have an understanding of jury nullification. Now, there was a question as to, can people get on trial, get on a jury, and if the lawyer asks, do they know anything about jury nullification, can the person just hold their tongue, say no, they don't? And it has been deemed by, there was already a court case, it's called reservation. You can reserve your ideas and make sure that you get on the jury. It is not unconstitutional, it's not illegal to reserve your idea. People are always putting on an act for something. If you don't want to be on a jury, you can act terrible and get yourself kicked out. It's quite easy, right? Jury nullification is nullifying tyrannical laws, people being prosecuted for political means. Now, I believe that when we come to the penal system in the United States, the jails, the prisons, privately owned prison, privately owned jails, who the CEOs of these corporations have gone to the state legislatures and made sure that the most heinous sentences are demanded of the judges, that the judge have a duty to sentence a person to a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, without mandatory sentencing, that the jurors should nullify all of that stuff. It's all unjust, especially when we're talking about somebody who uses drugs. Somebody who uses drugs is not hurting anybody. Somebody who uses drugs, and we're talking about a lot of black people, 75% of the black men in jail today are there because of drug use. Black people are not running around shooting people. They're not running around mass murdering people. They're not stealing a priceless art. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're not beating people over the head. They are simply being caught with pot. 75%, almost 100% of the people, of the black men in jail today, are there because they use marijuana, not because they're these psychomaniac killers, not because they're these rogue thieves that break into people's houses, beat up the husband and wife and take their TV. Doesn't happen. So the other 25% have all the other cases. A majority of the white men in jail are the hard criminals. They're not there for drug use. White men and drug use usually get off free, scot-free, completely free, usually. And that has been looked up and studied and what have you, and there's all sorts of papers and what have you talking about it. It's all over YouTube if you care to look that up. People have a duty in those instances, I believe, to nullify this. We have Colorado now passing a law saying it's completely legal to use marijuana. So I say in these other states, juries should nullify any person on trial for drug use. Now, these drug kingpins that are running around murdering people and shooting the person that they're selling it to keep the money and all that sort of stuff, all of that malarkey, all of that craziness, no, that person, no, you don't let go free. But the person who sits at home and smokes pot all day and munches on cookies and has a nice time, or the person who is laying on a deathbed eating marijuana brownies, marijuana cookies to stop their glaucoma or cancer pain, that person, of course, you do not want to be prosecuted by the federal government. First of all, the federal government does not have the authority under the Constitution to even have a DEA or even an FBI or a CIA or an NSA. It is unconstitutional. But you know what? People have been told for so many years that those are constitutional and those are a government right and a duty of the federal government, that they won't believe me. Of course you won't believe me. You've been told all the rest for forever that I'm wrong and that they're right. But I'm here to tell you, I'm right. The federal government shouldn't have a DEA. The only people who should have any police powers whatsoever inside the United States are local and state government. The sovereign people of the nation, that is, the citizens of the nation, police themselves, not the federal government. The federal government doesn't have any authority to come into a state and prosecute a person based on a federal law. There should be no such thing as a federal criminal law. Where does the federal government sit? It sits nowhere but on Capitol Hill. There is nothing on Capitol Hill that somebody in Wyoming is violating. A person in Wyoming violating a local law, yes, that person can be prosecuted by the citizens of Wyoming. So what are we talking about now? Now we're talking about sovereignty. So the people who are at the top, who are sovereign, are the citizens of each state. You, as a citizen of each state, are sovereign. Underneath you are the people that you elect to your local and state government. That's the next rung. And the states, through ratification of the Constitution, are sovereign above the federal government. It's not the other way around. During the past 100 years, it has been switched around. That the federal government is the one who is sovereign over everybody else, including the citizens. And that is not the case. The case is that sovereignty flows from the citizen to the local level, then to the federal level. It is the citizen who has all of the rights. The states have limited rights, and the federal government has enumerated limited rights. Jury nullification, then, because the citizen is sovereign, has the ability to nullify federal law. Understand that. Thank you for watching the Shikama Live Show. Please leave a comment below. It helps me to spread the word, believe it or not.